blood and sand. That's what Rome demanded, and that's what Rome would get. Livia Octavia Drusus stood at the balcony of her family's once prestigious villa, watching the sun set over the eternal city. The daughter of a disgraced senator, she needed more than prayers to restore her family name. She needed power. She needed victory. She needed a champion who could survive the games. Not a husband, not a lover, a weapon forged in the brutal fires of the arena. When her eyes first met his through the iron bars of the ludus, she saw something the other patrons missed. Behind those battle-hardened eyes lay not just strength, but cunning, intelligence. This gladiator understood the true game being played in Rome. But what happens when the man you purchase as your champion begins to claim pieces of your heart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Morning light spilled through the atrium of the Drusus villa, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Though the marble still gleamed, observant eyes would notice the thinning of the household staff, the slightly faded murals, the absence of fresh flowers that once adorned every corner. Livia ran her fingers over her father's tarnished seal ring, which she wore on a chain beneath her stola. Once, that seal had opened doors throughout Rome. Now it was a reminder of all they had lost, and all she intended to reclaim. "My lady, your father requests your presence in his study." The voice belonged to Selene, Livia's trusted freedwoman and closest confidant. Livia nodded, tucking the ring back beneath her garments. "How is he today?" "His joints pain him, but his mind remains sharp." Selene's dark eyes held concern. "And sharp-tongued as well." A smile flickered across Livia's face. "Some things never change, even when the gods test us." In the study, Senator Marcus Drusus sat surrounded by scrolls, his once powerful frame now diminished. Still, his eyes burned with the same intensity that had once made emperors take notice. Before he had spoken against corruption in the Senate and found himself stripped of influence, though not technically of title. "Daughter," he acknowledged as she entered. "You were seen at the docks yesterday." "I was gathering information," Livia replied calmly, pouring him a cup of watered wine without being asked. "The grain shipments from Egypt tell us more about the emperor's priorities than any court gossip." "And what did you learn from this grain counting?" Her father's tone was dismissive, but she caught the spark of interest he couldn't quite hide. "That despite public claims of abundance, the shipments are smaller. The emperor prepares for war in the east while telling Rome all is well." She seated herself across from him. "Which means the games will be even more important, a distraction for hungry citizens." From the doorway came a younger voice. "And where there's distraction, there's opportunity." Marcus, Livia's 19-year-old brother, entered with a scroll tucked under his arm. Unlike his father and sister, he had never shown interest in politics, preferring the study of philosophy and history. "Exactly," Livia nodded. "The imperial games approach. Every family of note will sponsor fighters. The victors will bask in public adoration." "Blood sport," their father muttered. "Rome's appetite for violence grows while its wisdom shrinks." "Perhaps," Livia conceded. "But it is the field upon which we must play. I intend to sponsor a champion." Her father's cup paused halfway to his lips. "With what coin?" "Our resources dwindle daily. I've saved. Invested carefully in ventures Marcus helped identify." She nodded toward her brother, who ducked his head modestly. "We have enough for one significant wager." "And if your chosen gladiator falls in the first match?" her father challenged. "He won't." Her certainty silenced the room. Later, in the small garden where herbs for the kitchen and medicinal purposes grew under Selene's careful tending, Livia explained her plan more fully. "You've already chosen this champion, haven't you?" Selene asked, grinding herbs with practiced movements. "I've been watching the training matches at the ludus for months. There's one, a Thracian, undefeated in 17 bouts. A beast for the arena." "Then," Selene remarked. "No," Livia countered. "That's what makes him different. He fights with his mind as much as his strength. He studies his opponents, finds their weaknesses. He doesn't waste energy on spectacle. You speak of him as if he were a general planning campaigns, not a slave fighting for others' entertainment. Livia's gaze grew distant. I believe he was once. There's something in his bearing. Rumors say he was nobility in his homeland before capture. Celine paused her work. You risk everything on this man. If he falls, then so do we, Livia finished. But we fall anyway if we do nothing. Father's enemies circle like vultures, waiting for the last of our coin to disappear. This champion is our last chance. A messenger arrived at the garden gate, bearing a sealed tablet. Livia broke the wax, her expression hardening as she read. What is it? Celine asked. Vibius, Livia said, naming her father's chief political rival. He's petitioned to have father removed from the Senate entirely, citing continued ill health. He moves quickly. Too quickly. Livia stood, decision made. We visit the ludus tomorrow. The time for watching is over. As evening fell, Livia returned to the balcony where she had stood the night before. In her hand, she clutched her father's seal ring, the emblem of the Drusus family catching the last light of day. Not for glory, she whispered the family motto. For Rome. But even Rome had forgotten them. Tomorrow, she would begin to remind the city of who they were. Dawn broke over the ludus with the sound of wood striking wood. While other gladiators still slept, Maximus practiced alone in the training yard, his wooden sword whistling through the morning air. 6 years of captivity had not diminished his discipline. If anything, it had honed it to a deadly edge. Still trying to wear out my training equipment, Thracian? Gallus, the ludus owner, observed from the yard's edge, his prosperous belly straining against an embroidered tunic. Maximus didn't pause his drills. Your equipment, he replied between controlled breaths, like your fighters, improves with proper use. Gallus laughed without humor. Philosophy from a barbarian. Rome has corrupted you. He tossed a cloth-wrapped bundle that landed at Maximus's feet. Eat. Important visitors today. I want my prime fighter looking healthy. When Gallus departed, Maximus unwrapped the bundle to find bread fresher than the usual fare, even a small portion of cheese. Special treatment meant high-stakes matches, approaching or a potential sale to a new patron. He ate methodically, watching as other gladiators filtered into the yard. Some nodded respectfully in his direction. None approached. His reputation ensured both respect and isolation. Titus, a young Roman who had chosen the gladiator's life to escape gambling debts, was the only one who dared sit nearby. They say a senator's daughter is coming, he said without preamble. Looking for champions for the imperial games. Maximus didn't respond, but his grip tightened imperceptibly on the wooden practice sword beside him. The games where Emperor Hadrian himself will attend, Titus continued. Victory there means nothing, Maximus cut him off. Just louder cheers before the next fight. They say the emperor sometimes grants freedom to exceptional fighters. They say many things. Maximus stood, ending the conversation. Freedom. The word had lost meaning after so many false promises. So many patrons who spoke of manumission only to disappear after their political objectives were achieved. In his cell that evening, Maximus examined the wooden training sword, his most consistent companion for 6 years. He had been a prince once, commander of Thracian cavalry, before a Roman legion had overrun their position. His royal blood had saved him from immediate execution, making him valuable property instead. He ran a finger along a notch in the sword's edge, remembering each man who had fallen to his real blade in the arena. 23. Some had been criminals condemned to death, others slaves like himself. He had made their ends quick when possible, a small mercy in a merciless world. The sound of metal on metal announced the ludus guards making evening rounds. Maximus, the head guard called. Gallus wants you bathed and presentable by morning. Important patron coming specifically to see you. When the guard had passed, Titus whispered from the next cell. It must be her, the senator's daughter, or another bored noble seeking exotic thrills. Maximus replied grimly. He had been paraded before wealthy women before, their eyes assessing him like a prized horse or worse. What if it's your chance? Titus persisted. A noble sponsor for the Imperial Games? Then I'll fight. I'll win. And I'll return to this cell as always. Maximus placed the wooden sword carefully in the corner of his small space. Save your dreams for sleep, Roman. But as darkness fell, unwanted thoughts crept in. The Imperial Games. The Emperor in attendance. Freedom not just from the ludus but potentially from Rome itself. The possibility of seeing Thrace again, the mountains and forests of his homeland. Dawn found him awake, performing his training routine from memory within the confines of his cell. The wooden sword moved in practice patterns, muscle memory born of thousands of repetitions. When guards came to escort him to the baths, he was already prepared mentally, his expression betraying nothing of the night's thoughts. Remember, Gallus instructed as slaves scrubbed Maximus clean. Show your skills, but keep your barbarian tongue civil. This patron has connections. Freshly bathed, oiled to highlight his battle-scarred musculature, Maximus stood in the ludus's display area where potential sponsors could assess fighters up close. The wooden training sword had been replaced with a polished but blunted gladius. All for show, as no patron wanted to risk damage to valuable property. As the gates opened to admit the day's visitors, Maximus straightened imperceptibly. He had learned to read Roman nobility at a glance, to distinguish between those who saw gladiators as men and those who saw them merely as beasts for entertainment. This would be no different. He would play his part, the champion, the undefeated Thracian, the prized investment, until he saw her, and something in her calculating gaze told him this patron might be different after all. Livia entered the ludus with practiced composure, Selene a half-step behind her. They had dressed modestly, wealthy enough to command respect, but not ostentatious enough to suggest easy coin for Gallus to extract. She noted how the Lanista's eyes assessed her jewelry, her clothing, calculating her worth before he'd spoken a word. "Welcome to the finest ludus in Rome," Gallus bowed, his oily charm immediately setting Livia's teeth on edge. "I am Gallus, humble servant to the games and provider of champions." "I seek only one champion," Livia replied coolly. "I understand you house the Thracian who has never known defeat." A flicker of surprise crossed Gallus's face. Most noble women came to gawk at the collection, not with specific fighters in mind. "Ah, you speak of Maximus. A magnificent specimen, indeed. However, his services command significant investment." "I've come to invest, not to haggle with middlemen," Livia said. "Show me your fighters." Beginning with the Thracian. The display yard held 20 men, arranged by fighting style and accomplishment. Livia walked the line with the discerning eye of one who had studied the games meticulously. She paused before each man, not just assessing physical prowess but watching their eyes, their bearing. When she reached Maximus, she found herself looking up to meet his gaze. Unlike the others who stared ahead blankly or affected fierceness for the patron's benefit, his dark eyes evaluated her just as thoroughly as she evaluated him. "Your reputation precedes you, Thracian," she said, speaking directly to him rather than through Gallus, who hovered nervously nearby. "As does yours, daughter of Drusus," Maximus replied, his Latin cultured despite the foreign inflection. Livia maintained her composure despite her surprise. "You know who I am. Rome talks. Even slaves hear whispers. And what do these whispers say of me?" The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "That you are either very brave or very desperate to restore your family's honor. Perhaps both." Gallus stepped between them, aghast at the gladiator's familiarity. "Forgive him, my lady. The barbarian forgets his place." "His place is precisely what we're here to discuss." Livia cut him off, then addressed Maximus again. "I require a champion for the Imperial Games. Victory would be handsomely rewarded." "Many patrons have promised rewards," Maximus replied evenly. "I promise freedom," Livia said. "Complete manumission, documented before a magistrate prior to the games, to be granted upon victory in the final match." Now genuine surprise registered on the gladiator's face, quickly masked. "An unusual arrangement," Gallus sputtered. "Perhaps we should discuss terms privately." In Gallus's office, the real negotiation began. The purchase contract lay between them, its terms clear. Temporary ownership until the game's conclusion. Freedom for the gladiator contingent upon victory. A substantial sum for Gallus regardless of outcome. "This is most irregular," Gallus protested. "The Thracian is my most valuable fighter. To risk losing him entirely. Your most valuable fighter brings you no coin sitting in this ludus," Livia countered. "The imperial games offer the highest purses in Rome. Your percentage of the winnings alone would exceed what you'd earn from him in a year of common matches." "And if he falls?" Gallus asked, though they both knew the real concern was the freedom clause. "Then you keep the purchase price as compensation." Livia pushed a small but heavy pouch across the table. "Half now, half when the contract is witnessed." Gallus weighed the pouch, his greed warring with suspicion. "And what guarantee do I have that this arrangement remains exclusive to the Imperial Games? That you won't exploit his talents in lesser venues before then?" "It's in the contract," Livia said. "He fights only in the Imperial Games under my patronage. Until then, he trains at my family's villa, where he can prepare without distraction." "Your villa?" Gallus's eyebrows rose. "Most unusual indeed." "My investment, my conditions," Livia stated firmly. "I've also arranged for a magistrate to meet us here this afternoon to witness the agreement. Unless you require more time to consider." The pouch of coins disappeared into Gallus's robes with surprising speed. No need at all. I'll have the Thracian prepared for transport immediately." As Gallus busied himself with the arrangements, Selene whispered to Livia, "You're certain about this? Bringing a gladiator into your home?" "He's not just any gladiator," Livia murmured back. "Did you notice how he assessed the room when we entered? How he spoke? There's a mind behind those arena skills, and we need both to succeed." Hours later, after the magistrate had witnessed the contract and Gallus had reluctantly accepted the terms, Maximus stood in the ludus courtyard with nothing but a small bundle of possessions. The purchase contract, sealed and verified, represented both his temporary ownership and potential freedom, a document more valuable than anything he had possessed in years. "Are you ready?" Livia asked, her litter waiting at the gates. Maximus looked back at the ludus walls one last time. "I've been ready since they brought me to Rome in chains," he answered, and followed her into an uncertain future. The Drusus villa came into view as their small procession rounded the hill, modest by senatorial standards, but still impressive with its red-tiled roof and columned entrance. Maximus observed it with a warrior's eye, noting defensible positions, potential escape routes, the number of household guards visible from the approach. "Not what you expected?" Livia asked, noting his scrutiny. "I expected nothing," Maximus replied. "Expectations lead to disappointment. A convenient philosophy for a slave." His eyes met hers. "And for a fallen noble house." Instead of taking offense, Livia smiled slightly. "Perhaps we understand each other better than I thought." The villa steward greeted them at the entrance, his expression carefully neutral at the sight of the gladiator. "My lady, your father awaits you in the tablinum. Show our guest to the quarters we prepared," Livia instructed. "Ensure he has water for bathing and a meal." The steward hesitated. "The Eastern guest room?" "Yes," Livia confirmed. "And Stephanos, he is to be treated as a valued guest, not a servant." Maximus followed the steward through the villa's airy corridors, aware of the stares from household slaves and the whispers that followed. The Eastern guest room proved surprisingly comfortable, simple but clean, with a window overlooking the training area Livia had mentioned. On the bed lay a spear with a polished wooden shaft and gleaming iron tip. Not a training weapon, but a real weapon of war. Maximus lifted it, testing its balance. Perfect for a cavalry officer, exactly what he had once been. "My sister thought you might appreciate something more suitable than practice swords," a young man said from the doorway. "I'm Marcus, Livia's brother." Maximus studied the youth, noting the scholar's pallor and ink-stained fingers. Your sister places remarkable trust in a man she's just purchased. Marcus shrugged. Livia doesn't do anything without calculation. If she's placed a weapon in your room, she has reason to believe you won't use it against us. And what do you believe? That my sister rarely miscalculates. Marcus smiled. The baths are ready when you wish to use them. I'd be honored to show you around afterward. After washing away the ludus grime, Maximus found himself in the villa's central garden with Marcus, who enthusiastically pointed out various plants and explained their medicinal properties. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Senator Drusus, leaning heavily on a walking stick. So this is the champion my daughter has staked our future upon, the old man said, appraising Maximus with sharp eyes that belied his frail appearance. A Thracian prince, I'm told. Once, Maximus acknowledged with a slight inclination of his head. Not quite a bow, but respectful enough. And now what are you? Besides property with an expiration date. Father, Marcus protested, but Drusus waved him silent. I am what Rome made me, Maximus answered evenly. As are we all. The senator's stern expression cracked into a bitter smile. Well said, though I suspect Rome has dealt you a harsher hand than most. Different, not harsher. At least my chains are visible. Before Drusus could respond, Livia joined them. I see you've met our champion, father. Indeed, he has a philosopher's tongue and a soldier's bearing. Whether that translates to arena victories remains to be seen. The senator turned to leave, then added over his shoulder, Dinner is in an hour. Our guest will join us. Later, as they gathered in the triclinium for the evening meal, Maximus noted the quality of food and wine. Modest for nobility, but finer than anything he'd tasted in years. He ate with disciplined restraint while observing the family dynamics. Drusus dominated despite his frailty. Livia deferred publicly while subtly guiding conversations, and Marcus bridged tensions with scholarly digressions. Tell me, Drusus addressed Maximus over the second course. What is your assessment of your chances in the games? Better than most, Maximus replied, though the imperial games attract the empire's deadliest fighters. And your strategy? To survive each match until the final one. Drusus snorted. Hardly inspiring. Inspiration is for poets, Senator. Victory requires practicality. And what do you know of victory beyond the arena's artificial confines? The old man challenged. I commanded 3,000 cavalry against your legions before my capture, Maximus stated without emotion. We held the mountain pass for 7 days against a force that outnumbered us 5-1. Silence fell over the table. Even Livia looked surprised at this revelation. As servants cleared the dishes, one approached with Maximus's wine cup. As the server leaned in to pour, Maximus caught the faintest whiff of something bitter beneath the wine's bouquet. In one fluid motion, he caught the server's wrist. Taste it, he commanded. The servant's eyes widened in panic. Am my lord I? Now. Maximus's grip tightened. What is the meaning of this? Drusus demanded. Your hospitality includes poisoned wine, Maximus said, never taking his eyes off the terrified servant. Livia was on her feet instantly. Guards! Seize him! As the household guards dragged the would-be assassin away, Livia turned to Maximus with new respect. How did you know? In the arena, you learn to sense death approaching, he answered simply. It seems your family has enemies even within your walls. Not for long, she promised grimly. Dawn found Maximus in the villa's training yard, moving through combat forms with meticulous precision. The space, once an ornamental garden, had been converted for his use, with a packed dirt floor, wooden practice dummies, and a weapons rack holding blunted training implements. You begin early, Livia observed from the portico, a scroll tucked under her arm. Maximus completed his sequence before acknowledging her. The sun waits for no man, especially one with much to accomplish. Indeed, she descended the steps to join him in the yard. After last night's incident, we've made changes. The servant who tried to poison you has been questioned. He was in Vibius's pay. Your father's enemy is thorough, and now aware that we're making moves against him. Livia unrolled the scroll she carried. These are records from previous Imperial games. Winning strategies, notable victors, common mistakes. Maximus took the scroll, his eyes scanning the meticulous notes. You've studied the games as if they were military campaigns. Aren't they? Different terrain, perhaps, but the same principles. She watched him reading. You understand Greek as well as Latin. A prince's education, he replied without looking up. Though I doubt my tutors envisioned this application of my learning. A comfortable silence fell as he continued reading. Finally, he rolled the scroll closed. These records are valuable, but incomplete. The games change each year. New weapons, different arena configurations. Which is why I've arranged for reports after each day's preliminary matches. Maximus nodded appreciatively. You think like a general. I think like someone who cannot afford to lose. She gestured to the training yard. Is there anything else you require? A training partner would be useful. Someone quick, not necessarily strong. I'll arrange. I'll do it, came Marcus's voice as he emerged from the villa, already dressed in a simple tunic suitable for exercise. Livia frowned. Marcus, this isn't one of your scholarly pursuits. Which is precisely why I should do it, her brother countered. My mind grows stale with too many scrolls and not enough practical knowledge. Maximus studied the young man thoughtfully. Have you any combat training? Only what any noble son receives. Enough to avoid embarrassing himself in public displays. Not enough to be useful in actual combat. Then we begin with basics, Maximus decided. Stance and movement first. Weapons later. As the brothers began their training, Livia withdrew to a shaded bench where Celine joined her with a tray of fruits and a pitcher of water. Is it wise to allow Marcus such proximity to the gladiator? Celine asked quietly. Marcus needs confidence beyond his books, Livia replied. And Maximus needs to be invested in our family's welfare, not just his freedom. They watched as Maximus patiently corrected Marcus's foot positioning, explaining weight distribution and balance with the same precision he brought to his own training. He teaches well, Celine observed. Not what one expects from a man trained to kill. He was a commander before he was a gladiator, Livia reminded her. Leadership requires instruction. When midday heat made training impractical, they moved indoors where Livia presented Maximus with another surprise, a detailed dietary plan. The Greeks write extensively on athletic preparation, she explained. More protein for muscle recovery, specific fruits for endurance, less wine, more water. Maximus raised an eyebrow. The ludus diet was simple, enough to keep us alive and fighting. Which is why ludus champions rarely reach their potential, Livia countered. You'll have proper nutrition, adequate rest, and targeted training. Every advantage I can provide. That evening, Senator Drusus observed Maximus teaching Marcus basic defensive moves in the cooling air of the garden. The old man watched silently until Marcus noticed his presence and faltered. Continue, Drusus commanded. Don't stop on my account. As Marcus resumed his practice, Drusus addressed Maximus. My son has never shown interest in martial pursuits. Knowledge of defense need not mean love of violence, Maximus replied. In Thrace, even our scholars learned to protect themselves. And did your scholars survive when Rome came? Some fled to the mountains with our sacred texts. Others died protecting them. Maximus demonstrated a blocking move for Marcus. A sword arm without a thinking mind behind it is just a tool easily turned. Your son has the mind. He merely needs the skills to protect it. Later, as Maximus retired to his quarters, he found Livia waiting in the corridor. My father rarely approves of anything, she said. Yet he spoke favorably of your work with Marcus today. Training the body also trains the spirit, Maximus replied. Your brother has potential beyond his scrolls. As do we all. She hesitated, then added, Tomorrow we'll discuss strategy for the preliminary matches. The first will likely come sooner than expected, Vibius has influence with the game's organizers. How soon? Perhaps 2 weeks. Not as much time as I'd hoped. Maximus nodded. Then we use each day fully. As she turned to leave, he added, Livia, the use of her name, not Domina or my lady, made her pause. Your enemy now knows you have a champion. He will prepare accordingly. Then we must ensure you're prepared for whatever he brings, she answered, and disappeared into the shadowed corridor and his opulent villa across Rome. Senator Lucius Vibius reclined on a silk-cushioned couch while a slave read reports from his network of informants. His fingers tapped impatiently against a golden wine cup. Enough, he interrupted. What news of the Drusus household? The slave hesitated. My lord, it appears they have acquired a champion for the games. The Thracian from Gallus's ludus. Maximus. Vibius sat up straighter. Old Drusus has found funds for that investment? Interesting. He dismissed the slave and summoned his steward. Send word to our friends organizing the preliminary matches. I want the Thracian scheduled against Tigris. The Gaul, my lord? He's one of the deadliest fighters in Rome. Precisely. Let's end this Drusus resurgence before it begins. At the Drusus villa, an unexpected delivery arrived. An elegantly penned invitation on expensive parchment. Livia examined the seal before breaking it. Praetor Cassius invites us to his banquet, she announced to her father and brother over the morning meal. 3 days hence, in honor of the upcoming games. Senator Drusus frowned. Cassius has ignored us for 2 years. Why the sudden interest? News travels, Livia replied. Our acquisition of a renowned champion has made us relevant again. Or it's a trap, her father countered. Vibius and Cassius have long been allies. Had been allies, Livia corrected. My sources suggest a cooling between them since Cassius's nephew returned from Greece with new political ambitions. Marcus looked up from his scrolls. Will you bring Maximus to the banquet? The question hung in the air as Livia considered. It would be unexpected. Gladiators don't typically attend such functions. Which is precisely why it might be advantageous, Marcus suggested. A calculated display of confidence. Their father studied his son with new respect. Perhaps your training extends beyond physical exercises. Later, Livia found Maximus in the training yard, drilling Marcus on defensive maneuvers using wooden practice swords. You've improved, she observed to her brother, who beamed at the rare compliment. He learns quickly, Maximus acknowledged, though he favors his right side too predictably. When Marcus departed for his studies, Livia explained the invitation. Praetor Cassius rarely extends such invitations without purpose. His support could be valuable against Vibius. And my role in this political theater? Maximus asked. You would attend not as a gladiator, but as a foreign military advisor in our household. She watched his reaction carefully. It's unusual, but not without precedent. Wealthy families sometimes retain foreign experts. A thin disguise, but sufficient for public pretense. Those who matter will understand the message, that we value you beyond the arena. Maximus considered this. And if recognized, then we acknowledge your true role confidently. Either way, it serves our purpose. On the night of the banquet, the Drusus family arrived at Praetor Cassius's magnificent home with careful timing, not among the first to appear eager, nor among the last to seem dismissive. Maximus accompanied them, dressed in a quality tunic that, while simple, marked him as more than a common slave. Senator Drusus, Cassius greeted them at the entrance, a corpulent man with shrewd eyes. A pleasure to see you in good health. His gaze shifted to Maximus. And this is? Maximus of Thrace, Livia introduced smoothly. A military advisor assisting our family with certain strategic matters. Indeed, Cassius raised an eyebrow. I look forward to hearing his insights during dinner. As they entered the crowded atrium, whispers followed. The Drusus family, long absent from such gatherings, had returned with an intriguing companion. Vibius is here, Marcus murmured, nodding toward a corner where their enemy held court among supporters. As expected, Livia replied. Remember what we discussed. Confidence without provocation. Throughout the evening, Maximus observed the intricate dance of Roman politics with the same analytical eye he brought to combat. When questioned directly by curious nobles, he responded with measured words that revealed little while suggesting depth, a tactic Livia had coached. Your advisor speaks well for a foreigner, Cassius commented to Livia as servants brought the third course. Almost as well as he fights, if rumors are true. Livia maintained her composure. Rumors often exaggerate, Praetor. Not these, I think. Cassius leaned closer. The preliminary match schedules were finalized today. Your champion faces Tigris the Gaul in 8 days. A chill ran through Livia despite the warm evening. Tigris was notorious, a vicious fighter with 12 consecutive kills in the arena. Vibius's arrangement, no doubt, she replied evenly. No doubt, Cassius agreed. But not all of us appreciate his methods. Some believe fresh blood would benefit Rome's political landscape. As they prepared to depart, Vibius finally approached, his smile tight. Senator Drusus, how unexpected to see you in society again, and with such interesting company. Senator Vibius, Drusus acknowledged coldly. Rome is full of surprises these days. Indeed it is. Vibius's gaze lingered on Maximus. I look forward to the upcoming games with particular interest. First matches often prove decisive. The threat hung in the air as he walked away. He knows, Marcus whispered. Of course he knows, Livia replied. But so does Cassius, and he's not firmly in Vibius's camp. We've gained ground tonight. Maximus remained silent until they reached their litter. Tigris fights with a spear and net. Fast, unpredictable. I've watched him before. Can you defeat him? Livia asked directly. In the torchlight, Maximus's expression was grim but determined. 8 days is not much time, but it will be enough. The preliminary arena stood in the shadow of the great Colosseum like a younger sibling, smaller, less grand, but no less deadly for those who fought within its oval walls. 8 days had passed in a blur of intensive training, strategy sessions, and preparation. Now, as Livia sat in the patron's box with her father and brother, she worked to maintain the composed facade expected of Roman nobility while her stomach twisted with tension. He looks calm, Marcus observed, watching Maximus in the preparation area below. The gladiator methodically checked his armor, simple leather and bronze, regulation for preliminary matches. He's fought many times before, Livia replied, though she wondered if Maximus felt the weight she did, the knowledge that their family's future balanced on the edge of his sword. Senator Drusus leaned heavily on his walking stick, his expression unreadable. Tigris enters from the eastern gate. 3 consecutive kills in preliminary matches this season. The Gaul emerged to enthusiastic cheers, tall and lean with corded muscles and wild red hair. He carried his signature weapons, a barbed trident and net, and played to the crowd with practiced showmanship. By contrast, Maximus entered quietly, acknowledging the more modest applause with a simple raised hand. He carried a gladius and small shield, traditional, effective, without flourish. Such different styles, a voice commented nearby. Livia turned to find Praetor Cassius settling into the seat beside her. The Gaul fights for the crowd. Your Thracian fights to win. An interesting distinction. Praetor, she acknowledged with appropriate deference. We're honored by your attention. The honor is mine. Few preliminary matches have generated such interest. He gestured toward another box where Vibius watched with an anticipatory smile. Your champion has drawn quite the audience. The match horn sounded. Below, Tigris immediately began an aggressive display, spinning his trident and circling wide to demonstrate speed and reach. Maximus remained centered, shield ready, observing his opponent's movement patterns. He's not engaging, Marcus whispered nervously. He's learning, Livia corrected. The first real exchange came suddenly. Tigris lunging with frightening speed, net whistling through the air. Maximus sidestepped, using his shield not to block but to deflect the trident's path. A collective gasp rose as the weapons missed by mere inches. Interesting, Cassius remarked. He didn't retreat. Several more exchanges followed, each more aggressive than the last. Tigress, known for quick victories, grew visibly frustrated as Maximus countered each attack without offering openings of his own. When blood first appeared, a shallow cut along Maximus's thigh, Livia's fingers gripped the stone bench beneath her. She forced herself to breathe normally, aware of watching eyes. "The Gaul tires," Drusus observed quietly. "Look at his breathing." Tigress, accustomed to overwhelming opponents quickly, had expended energy on dramatic attacks. Now his movements slowed fractionally, imperceptible to most observers, but not to a trained warrior. Maximus, who had fought with disciplined economy, seized the moment. His first offensive move was so unexpected that Tigress barely raised his trident in time. The crowd roared as Maximus pressed forward, forcing the Gaul to backpedal. When Tigress cast his net in desperate defense, Maximus caught it on his shield, stepped inside the Gaul's guard, and delivered a precise strike to the shoulder, disabling but not fatal. Tigress fell to one knee, trident clattering away. The crowd, which had favored the flamboyant Gaul initially, now cheered the unexpected turn. Maximus stood poised for the killing blow but looked toward the patron's box, the traditional moment for the sponsor to decide the fallen gladiator's fate. Livia met his eyes across the distance. This was more than a simple match decision. It was a statement of who they were as a family. With deliberate calm, she extended her hand horizontally, then turned her thumb sideways. Neither death nor simple mercy, but respect. Maximus nodded almost imperceptibly, then helped Tigress to his feet. The crowd's reaction swelled, approval mixed with surprise at this unusual gesture in the often brutal preliminaries. "Masterfully done," Cassius commented. "Victory with honor rather than spectacle. You've made quite an impression, Lady Drusus." As attendants escorted Maximus from the arena, Livia noticed him bend to scoop a pinch of bloodied sand into a small leather pouch at his belt, a gladiator's superstition or personal ritual. Later, he would give her that pouch without explanation, and she would keep it as a talisman of their first shared victory. Across the arena, Vibius's expression had soured to barely concealed fury. Their champion had survived the first challenge, and their family had gained both visibility and respect in a single afternoon. But this was merely the beginning. The real games and greater dangers still lay ahead. Sunset painted the villa's walls golden as Livia carefully applied healing balm to the cut on Maximus's thigh. The wound was shallow but required attention to prevent infection, a gladiator's constant concern. "You didn't need to tend this yourself," Maximus said, watching her methodical movements. "Your household has slaves for such tasks." "I prefer to understand everything that affects our investment," Livia replied, though they both recognized the excuse for what it was. An evolving relationship neither was prepared to name. The victory celebration dinner had transformed the usually somber Drusus household. Senator Drusus, typically reserved, had ordered the best wine brought up from the cellar. Marcus animated the table with a dramatic retelling of the match, complete with expansive gestures that made even Maximus smile. Most striking was Maximus's place at the table, not standing attendance as a slave would, but seated as a guest of honor. The household staff exchanged glances at this unprecedented arrangement, but none dared question the family's decision. "Your strategy proved effective," Senator Drusus acknowledged, addressing Maximus directly. "Patience rather than spectacle." "Tigress fought for the crowd's approval," Maximus replied. "I fought for victory. A distinction worth remembering in politics as well," the old senator mused, swirling his wine. "Perhaps there's more to learn from arena tactics than I've credited." After the meal, Marcus convinced Maximus to explain Thracian cavalry formations using olive pits arranged on the table. The young scholar absorbed the impromptu military history lesson with evident fascination. "Your people's flanking techniques were revolutionary," Marcus said. "Our legions adopted similar methods after the Thracian campaigns." "Adoption or theft, the line blurs for conquerors," Maximus replied, though without the bitterness that might have accompanied such words weeks earlier. Later, As servants cleared the dishes, Selene approached Livia with a sealed message tablet. From Praetor Cassius's household, my lady. Delivered by personal courier. Livia broke the seal and scanned the contents, her expression revealing nothing until she'd finished. Interesting. Cassius invites us to a private meeting tomorrow. His note mentions mutual interests regarding the games. A potential ally? Her father asked. Or a more elegant trap than Vibius's direct approach? Livia cautioned. I'll attend with appropriate guards. I should accompany you, Maximus stated, not as a request but a fact. Senator Drusus raised an eyebrow. Your face is now known throughout Rome after today's victory. Hardly inconspicuous protection. Not as protection, Maximus clarified, as the subject of discussion. If Cassius truly has interest in the games, he's interested in your champion. The logic was sound, and arrangements were made for the meeting. As the evening cooled, Livia found herself walking in the garden with Maximus, the household retiring around them. You fought differently today than your previous matches, she observed. I've watched records of your bouts. Usually you end fights quickly. Those were ludus matches, simple entertainment with predetermined outcomes most times. Today had greater purpose. Our family's restoration, Livia nodded. And my freedom, he added quietly. They paused beside a small fountain, its gentle splashing the only sound in the night garden. In the silver moonlight, Livia studied his profile, the strong line of jaw, the watchful eyes that missed nothing. Tell me of Thrace, she requested suddenly. Not its military tactics, but your home. Surprise flickered across his face before he composed himself. Mountains thick with forests, valleys that turn emerald in spring. Winters harsh enough to make even the strongest appreciate a hearth fire. You miss it. I remember it, he corrected. Missing implies hope of return. If you win the Imperial Games, you'll have freedom and means. You could return. Maximus was silent for a long moment. Freedom changes a man. The homeland remembers a prince, not a gladiator. Their conversation was interrupted by Selene, apologetic but insistent. My lady, your father's pain has returned. He asks for you. As Livia turned to leave, Maximus spoke once more. The balm you used, an unusual mixture. Thracian herbs. From the Eastern market, she confirmed. Marcus researched treatments used by your people's warriors. Something shifted in Maximus's expression, subtle but profound. Tomorrow, when we meet Cassius, be cautious. Victory attracts attention from all quarters, not all of it welcome. Livia nodded, suddenly aware they stood closer than propriety might allow. Neither stepped back. Rest well, Thracian, she said softly. Rome talks of nothing but our champion tonight. Not our champion, he corrected. Your champion. The distinction lingered between them, increasingly difficult to maintain as the line between transaction and something more complex blurred with each passing day. Selene's network of informants, former slaves now placed in strategic households throughout Rome, proved invaluable once again. The message arrived before dawn. A small clay tablet with scratched writing that sent a chill through Livia as she decoded it. Ambush planned. Via Sacra. Midday. These men. Beware. Cancel the meeting with Cassius? Marcus suggested when she shared the warning at their private morning meal. Livia considered, weighing options with practiced calculation. No. Vibius expects that. Besides, Cassius's support is too valuable to dismiss. Then change the route, her brother offered. Take additional guards. Additional guards draw attention, Maximus interjected from the doorway. Livia hadn't heard him approach. For a man of his size, he moved with remarkable silence. And any alternate route would be equally vulnerable. What do you suggest? She asked, noting he wore the simple tunic of a household servant rather than his usual attire. We go as planned, but not as ourselves. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Livia's litter would depart with the expected escort, carrying Selene dressed in her mistress's clothes. Meanwhile, Livia and Maximus would travel separately as anonymous plebeians, a tradesman and his wife visiting the markets. The disguise chafes, Livia murmured as they navigated Rome's crowded streets, her finely bred accent carefully muted, head covered by a rough wool shawl. How do you bear it? Practice, Maximus replied, keeping his voice low. 6 years of being invisible unless required for entertainment. They approached the Via Sacra, Rome's ancient thoroughfare. Ahead, Livia glimpsed her own litter proceeding with appropriate dignity, guards alert for trouble. There, Maximus nodded subtly toward an alley intersection. 3 men watching the approach. Another 2 opposite. Livia wouldn't have noticed them, ordinary-looking men whose stillness amid the flowing crowd marked them to trained eyes. Vibius plans violence in broad daylight? That's unprecedented boldness. Not violence, Maximus corrected. Intimidation, perhaps theft of your correspondence. Public embarrassment rather than physical harm. They continued past the watchers unnoticed, maintaining their personas as humble citizens. The litter with Selene proceeded without incident, Vibius's men apparently waiting for a specific location further ahead. As they neared the forum, Maximus suddenly tensed. We're being followed. Don't look back. How many? 2. They recognized me despite the disguise. Options? She asked, appreciating his calm assessment. Continue to Cassius's villa, too dangerous. Return home, lead them to our ruse. Livia made a swift decision. 3rd option. This way. She led them down a side street toward a nondescript building with a red door. A merchant's office she knew through family connections. Before they reached it, their pursuers made their move. 2 men blocked the path ahead while footsteps quickened behind them. Unfortunate timing. One called with mock sympathy. Senator Vibius sends his regrets that you'll miss your appointment. Maximus pushed Livia slightly behind him, his stance shifting subtly. 4 against 1. Poor odds, for you. The first attacker lunged with a dagger. What followed happened so quickly Livia could barely track the movements. Maximus deflected the blade, struck the man's throat with frightening precision, and used the falling body to block a second attacker. A 3rd man grabbed for Livia, but she was prepared. The small knife concealed in her belt found the attacker's thigh with unexpected accuracy. Run, Maximus commanded, dispatching another assailant with efficient brutality. Not the choreographed violence of the arena, but the lethal economy of battlefield combat. They fled through narrow alleys, Maximus leading with an uncanny sense of direction. When they finally stopped in the shelter of an abandoned tannery, both were breathing hard. Are you injured? He asked, eyes scanning her for wounds. No, she managed between breaths. You? Nothing significant. His gaze remained watchful. You used a blade effectively. My father believed daughters should defend themselves, even if society disapproves of women's weapons. A hint of respect flickered in Maximus's eyes. Your father is wiser than most Romans. They remained hidden until certain no pursuit continued, then navigated a circuitous path to a modest insula building. My contact's home, Livia explained as they were admitted by a startled servant. We'll be safe here until nightfall. In the cramped but clean apartment, they washed away the evidence of their confrontation. The close quarters forced an intimacy neither had anticipated. Maximus tending a small cut on Livia's palm, their eyes meeting in silent acknowledgement of how narrowly they'd escaped. Vibius moves against you personally now, Maximus observed. Not just political maneuvering. Because we're succeeding, Livia replied. Today proved how desperate he's become, and how far he'll go to stop you. As twilight fell over Rome, they prepared to return to the villa, their shared danger having forged something neither could easily define. Trust beyond transaction, concern beyond obligation. Next time, Maximus said quietly as they departed, we prepare for worse than intimidation. The main games approached with relentless speed. Each morning began before dawn with Maximus training in the villa yard. Each evening ended with strategy discussions that stretched into the night. What had begun as preparation for a single preliminary match had evolved into comprehensive planning for the imperial games themselves. The emperor's attendance changes everything, Livia explained as they reviewed the known participants. Victories will be more meaningful, defeats more devastating, and competitors more dangerous, Maximus added. In the lamplight of the villa's library, he studied a sketch of the Colosseum's layout. The arena will be modified for the main games, obstacles, terrain variations. Marcus entered with scrolls tucked under his arm. I found references to last year's configurations. They flooded portions for naval reenactments. Livia smiled at her brother's enthusiasm. His transformation continued to surprise her. Still scholarly, but now applying his intellect to practical matters with newfound confidence. The training sessions with Maximus had awakened something in the young man that years of tutoring had not. Their planning was interrupted by a household slave. "Forgive the intrusion, Domina. The senator has taken ill. He asks for you." In her father's chambers, Livia found the old man pale against his pillows, breathing labored. The family physician looked grave. "The excitement of recent events has strained his heart," the physician explained quietly. "He requires absolute rest." Her father beckoned her closer. "Nonsense," he whispered hoarsely. "I've survived worse than an old man's fatigue." "The games will proceed as planned," Livia assured him. "Rest now. Restore your strength for our victory celebration." Later, as she returned to the library, she found Maximus teaching Marcus more advanced defensive techniques, using scrolls as impromptu practice weapons. "Keep your guard centered," Maximus instructed. "Protect your core first, limbs second." "My father's condition worsens," Livia announced, causing both men to stop. "The physician recommends prayer to Asclepius, which tells me conventional medicine offers little hope." Marcus's face fell. "Should we postpone our involvement in the games?" "No," she replied firmly. "Now more than ever we must succeed. Father needs to see the family restored before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Maximus set aside the scrolls. "Then we increase our preparations. The games begin in 8 days. Your brother should continue training as well." "Me?" Marcus looked startled. "I'm no fighter." "Not for combat," Maximus clarified. "For protection. Rome grows more dangerous for your family daily." Through the following days, Senator Drusus's health fluctuated, while Vibius made another move, attempting to bribe officials to place Maximus against multiple opponents in the opening match of the Imperial Games. "His desperation shows," Praetor Cassius informed Livia during a discreet meeting in the Temple of Vesta. They had rescheduled after the ambush attempt, selecting a public location too sacred for violence. "Such obvious manipulation offends even his allies." "Can you counter his influence?" Livia asked directly. "Perhaps," Cassius stroked his beard thoughtfully, "though it would position me against him publicly. A position that might prove advantageous if a new political alliance were forming." The praetor's eyes gleamed with interest. "Continue your champion's preparation, Lady Drusus. I shall attend to the match arrangements personally." The night before the Imperial Games' official commencement, Livia found herself unable to sleep. She wandered to the garden, where Maximus also stood watching the stars. "You should rest," she said, joining him by the small fountain. "As should you," he countered. "Tomorrow begins our true challenge." They stood in companionable silence until Maximus spoke again. In Thrace, warriors carried tokens from those they protected, reminders of purpose beyond survival. From a small pouch at his belt, he withdrew something that gleamed dully in the moonlight, a bronze amulet on a leather cord, marked with Thracian symbols. "My mother gave this to me before my first battle," he explained, offering it to her. "For protection. I can't wear it in the arena, but perhaps." Livia accepted the amulet, understanding the significance of this gift. The first personal object he had shared, perhaps the only item he still possessed from his homeland. "I will keep it until your final victory," she promised, slipping the cord around her neck and tucking the amulet beneath her stola. Their eyes met, the moment suspended between them. No longer merely patron and gladiator, not yet able to name what they had become. His hand rose hesitantly, almost touching her cheek, when a messenger's arrival shattered the moment. "Forgive me, Domina." The slave bowed deeply. "Word from the imperial household. The emperor himself will attend the opening day of the games." Livia's breath caught. "The stakes rise again." Maximus nodded grimly. "As does the opportunity. Imperial attention means imperial favor is possible." Neither spoke what both understood. Imperial disfavor was equally possible, and potentially fatal for them all. The Colosseum erupted with noise and color as Rome celebrated the opening of the imperial games. Banners rippled in the breeze, merchants hawked wine and souvenirs, and the tiered seating filled with citizens from every social stratum. Patricians in the front rows, plebeians high above, all unified in their hunger for spectacle. In the preparation chambers beneath the arena, Maximus methodically donned his armor. More elaborate than for the preliminary match, befitting the greater significance of these games. The Drusus family crest had been worked into the leather breastplate, marking him as their champion. "The crowd is larger than expected," Marcus reported, having come from the family's viewing box. "Word of your victory against Tigris has made you a favorite." Maximus tested the weight of his gladius. "Favorites die as easily as underdogs in the arena." "Cassius kept his word," Marcus continued. "You face 2 opponents rather than the 3 Vibius arranged. 2 is still unprecedented for an opening match," Maximus noted without emotion. "Your family's enemies are determined." "Our enemies," Marcus corrected, then looked embarrassed at his presumption. Maximus paused, then placed a hand briefly on the young man's shoulder. "Return to your sister. She'll need your strength today." In the Drusus family box, positioned better than their status should have allowed, Cassius's influence again. Livia felt the weight of the Thracian amulet against her skin beneath her finest stola. Her father had insisted on attending despite his health, propped up with cushions but present, his eyes alert, with fierce determination. "Vibius watches us," he murmured, nodding subtly toward a box across the arena where their enemy sat surrounded by sycophants. "Let him watch," Livia replied. "Today he witnesses the beginning of his failure." A flourish of trumpets announced the emperor's arrival. The crowd rose as one as Hadrian took his place in the imperial box, raising a hand in acknowledgement of their adulation. With another gesture, he signaled for the games to begin. The Lanista's announcement echoed across the arena. "For your pleasure, citizens of Rome, we present an exceptional contest. The undefeated Thracian, champion of the House of Drusus, faces 2 worthy opponents, Hector of Athens and Nasir of Damascus." The crowd's response intensified as the 3 gladiators entered from different gates. Maximus emerged into sunlight to substantial applause. His victory over Tigris had earned him recognition, though not yet devoted fans. His opponents were strategically selected. Hector, a technically skilled swordsman, and Nasir, known for brutal strength with a war hammer. Together they represented a challenge that would test both skill and endurance. "A calculated selection," Cassius commented, having joined the Drusus box. "Your champion must demonstrate both technique and stamina." Livia's fingers found the amulet through the fabric of her gown. "He will." The match began without preamble. Unlike the theatrical preliminaries, imperial games moved efficiently from introduction to combat. Immediately, Maximus faced a coordinated attack. His opponents had clearly planned their strategy. "They've trained together," Marcus observed anxiously. "Maximus fights alone." "Not alone," Livia murmured. "He carries our hopes with him." The battle unfolded with brutal elegance. Hector's quick sword strikes tested Maximus's defenses, while Nasir's hammer threatened devastating blows whenever he created distance. The Thracian moved with disciplined precision, conserving energy while seeking weaknesses in their coordination. The first critical moment came when Hector overextended during a thrust. Maximus sidestepped and struck with surgical precision, opening a deep gash in the Greek's sword arm. The crowd gasped as blood spattered across the sand. Wounded but not defeated, Hector retreated while Nasir pressed forward, his hammer whistling through air with force that would shatter bone on impact. Maximus parried a blow that would have staggered most men, the impact reverberating visibly up his arm. Vibius leaned forward in his box, anticipation evident on his face. For a breathless moment, Maximus appeared to falter, dropping to one knee. Nasir raised his hammer for a finishing blow, only to meet unexpected resistance as Maximus surged upward, inside the arc of the swing, his gladius finding the gap between armor pieces. Nasir stumbled backward, hammer falling from nerveless fingers. Hector, seeing his advantage disappearing, launched a desperate attack. What followed was a flurry of exchanges too swift for most spectators to follow. Blade against blade, skill against skill. When they separated, both men bore new wounds, but Hector's were clearly more severe. The Greek dropped to his knees, offering the traditional surrender. The crowd roared its approval as Maximus stood victorious, both opponents defeated but alive. In the imperial box, Emperor Hadrian studied the outcome with evident interest before raising his hand in the gesture of approval. Attendants entered the arena, placing a laurel crown upon Maximus's head, blood spattering its leaves as he bowed toward the imperial box. His eyes found Livia's across the distance. In that moment, something passed between them that transcended their formal arrangement. Pride, yes, but something deeper that neither dared name. From his box, Vibius watched with cold fury as Praetor Cassius publicly approached the Drusus family, offering conspicuous congratulations that would be noted by every influential person present. The tide was turning. Gradually but unmistakably, Maximus winced as the physician probed the deep bruise spreading across his ribs, a souvenir from Nasir's hammer that had come closer to ending his life than the crowd realized. Nothing broken, the physician announced, applying a pungent herbal paste to the injury. But you'll feel this for days to come. Avoid sudden movements. He faces the Numidian in 4 days, Livia reminded the physician from the doorway of the treatment room. Will he be sufficiently recovered? The physician hesitated. The body requires rest to heal properly. Fighting again so soon is inadvisable. Leave us, Livia commanded once the treatment was complete. When they were alone, she approached Maximus, her expression carefully neutral. You didn't mention the severity of this injury in the arena. It wasn't relevant to victory, he replied simply. It's relevant to future victories. Her fingers hovered near the bandaged area without touching. The Numidian is known for targeting existing injuries. All skilled fighters do. Maximus stood, moving with deliberate care. I'll adapt my strategy accordingly. The household had celebrated his second victory with a modest feast, though Senator Drusus had been too weak to attend. As night fell, most retired early, exhausted by the day's emotional extremes. Unable to find rest, Livia wandered to the garden where she often encountered Maximus during his own sleepless nights. The stone bench beside the small fountain had become their unofficial meeting place, neutral ground between their worlds. She found him there as expected, staring at the water's surface. You should be resting, she said, taking her place beside him. As should you. Silence settled between them, comfortable in its familiarity. The moonlight cast dappled shadows through the olive trees, and somewhere beyond the villa walls, Rome continued its eternal hum of activity. Today in the arena, Livia began hesitantly. When Nasir struck you, for a moment I thought, I know. His voice was quiet in the darkness. I realized then that I fear for more than our family's restoration. The confession emerged before she could reconsider. I fear for you. Maximus turned to study her, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Fear is natural before uncertainty. This isn't about uncertainty. Her hand found the Thracian amulet she still wore beneath her garments. This is about something I didn't anticipate when we made our arrangement. The fountain's gentle splashing filled the silence that followed. In Thrace, Maximus finally said, there's a belief that souls recognize each other from previous lives, that some connections exist before words name them. Livia felt her careful composure wavering. A poetic thought for a warrior. We are not only what Rome makes us. For the first time he reached out, his calloused fingers lightly touching the back. of her hand where it rested on the bench between them. Neither of us. The simple contact carried more meaning than elaborate declarations might have. A boundary crossed, a recognition of something neither had planned. My father's condition worsens, Livia said, not withdrawing her hand. The physician speaks of preparing for Elysium rather than recovery. I'm sorry. He's lived to see the beginning of our family's restoration. I pray he witnesses its completion. Her voice caught. But I fear that there isn't enough time, Maximus finished for her. She nodded, unexpectedly moved by his understanding. All my planning, all our efforts, and still some things remain beyond control. That is the nature of life in freedom or in chains. A sudden commotion from the villa interrupted their moment. Voices raised in urgency, lamps being lit in the family quarters. Domina, Celine called, hurrying into the garden. Your father, he's asking for you. And for. She hesitated, glancing at Maximus. They found Senator Drusus propped up in bed. His breathing labored but his eyes clear. When Maximus entered behind Livia, the old man gestured him closer. My daughter, he began, his voice thin but determined, believes you will win the final match. I intend to, Senator. Good. Drusus nodded weakly. Because I've received word about your final opponent. The champion of the imperial ludus will face you, the Macedonian. Livia's breath caught. The Macedonian was legendary, undefeated in 3 years of combat, personally trained by the emperor's military advisors. The ultimate test, Maximus acknowledged without emotion. A test arranged by Vibius, Drusus rasped. He petitioned the emperor directly. Can Cassius intervene? Livia asked. Her father shook his head. The emperor has spoken. The match is set. His gaze fixed on Maximus. But you should know the Macedonian has one weakness. Pride. He fights for glory, not survival. Maximus nodded his understanding of this insight, the difference between a man who fought to live and one who lived to fight. As they left the senator to rest, Livia paused in the corridor, the reality of their challenge settling heavily. The Macedonian has never been defeated. Neither had I, Maximus reminded her. Until Rome took everything. In the dim lamplight, their eyes met with new honesty. Fear acknowledged, feelings unspoken but understood, determination renewed by something stronger than their original bargain. The imperial summons arrived with the formality of a military dispatch. Sealed, ribboned, and delivered by a palace courier whose expressionless face revealed nothing of its contents. Livia broke the wax emblem before her father and brother in the tablinum. The emperor honors the Drusus family with an invitation to the pre-games banquet, she read aloud. All champions and their patrons will attend 3 nights hence. Senator Drusus, marginally improved but still weak, tapped his fingers thoughtfully against his chair. A significant opportunity. The emperor rarely involves himself with individual participants. Or a significant risk, Livia countered. We'll be surrounded by Vibius and his allies. The invitation specifically includes the honored champion of House Drusus, Marcus noted, reading over her shoulder. Maximus is expected to attend. A gladiator at an imperial banquet? The senator raised an eyebrow. Unprecedented. Not as a gladiator, Livia said, thinking quickly. We continue the pretense established at Cassius's gathering. Maximus as our Thracian military advisor. His victory in the games a convenient coincidence. The ruse was thin, but offered the minimal social fiction necessary for Roman nobility to accept his presence. Preparations began immediately. Appropriate clothing acquired, behaviors rehearsed, scenarios anticipated. Remember, Livia instructed Maximus as a tailor fitted him with a tunic of quality fabric, cut in a style that suggested foreign nobility rather than Roman fashion. Minimal speech. Deference without subservience. You observe military matters for our household. I've played many roles for Roman entertainment, he replied with understated irony. This merely requires different costuming. The night of the banquet arrived with tense anticipation. The imperial palace blazed with torchlight, The elite of Rome gathered in their finest display. Senators, generals, wealthy merchants, all orbiting the emperor like planets around the sun. The Drusus family entered with carefully measured confidence, Maximus half a step behind Livia. Eyes turned, whispers followed. Their strategy had succeeded in one respect: they had become impossible to ignore. Senator Drusus, Emperor Hadrian greeted them personally, a marked honor. Your family's champion has provided most impressive entertainment. Your magnificence honors us with your attention, the senator replied with appropriate humility. The emperor's shrewd eyes assessed Maximus. And this is the Thracian himself. Unusual to see a gladiator at court. Before anyone could respond, Vibius appeared at the emperor's side. Perhaps because he is not merely a gladiator, your magnificence. The House of Drusus presents him as a military advisor, a creative interpretation of his status. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then Emperor Hadrian laughed, defusing the tension. Creative indeed. I appreciate resourcefulness, Senator Drusus. And results. Your champion's victories have made these games memorable already. As the emperor moved to other guests, Vibius remained, his smile tight. Quite a performance, Drusus. Almost convincing. Unlike your transparent attempts to manipulate the games, Senator Drusus replied coolly. Vibius's expression hardened. Enjoy your temporary return to favor. After the final match, we'll see who holds the emperor's ear. He glanced at Maximus. Assuming your advisor survives the Macedonian. As the evening progressed, the banquet reached its culinary pinnacle. Exotic dishes from throughout the empire. Wines from the emperor's personal vineyards. Servants circulated with trays of ornate goblets for a ceremonial toast. Maximus accepted a goblet, then paused imperceptibly as he raised it to his lips. His nostrils flared slightly, detecting what others would miss. A bitter undertone beneath the wine's bouquet. Without changing expression, he participated in the toast motion but did not drink. When attention shifted elsewhere, he discreetly emptied the goblet into a decorative plant. Livia, noting the action, raised a questioning eyebrow. Poison, he murmured, barely moving his lips. Not enough to kill, but sufficient to ensure embarrassment, or reveal my true status when palace physicians treated me. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in calculation. Vibius, or someone in his service. Livia surveyed the room with new wariness. We should leave before. Commotion near the banquet's entrance interrupted her. A palace guard approached the emperor, speaking urgently in hushed tones. Hadrian's expression darkened, and he gestured toward Vibius, who joined him immediately. Something's happening, Marcus whispered. Senator Drusus signaled discreetly to a friendly senator nearby, who approached with casual deliberation. Assassination attempt foiled at the eastern gate, the man murmured. Would-be killers carried Thracian daggers, apparently targeting our Thracian guests. Understanding dawned on Livia's face. A false flag operation. Had you fallen ill from poison? She told Maximus. The assassins would have been conveniently discovered and killed, leaving Thracian weapons to implicate me. He finished grimly. We need to create distance, Senator Drusus decided. Make our excuses. Claim my health requires return to the villa. As they prepared to depart with appropriate apologies, Vibius watched from the emperor's side, his expression unreadable but his eyes never leaving Maximus. Their journey home proceeded in tense silence, the near escape weighing heavily on all. Arriving at the villa, they found further cause for alarm. The household in disarray, doors forced open, possessions disturbed. A search, Maximus assessed, surveying the systematic disruption. Not theft. For what? Marcus wondered. Livia hurried to her father's study, where correspondence and records were kept. Several scrolls were missing, most crucially, the original contract for Maximus's eventual freedom. Someone in our household? She realized with cold clarity. Someone helped them. The betrayal comes from within, Maximus confirmed, his expression hardening. As the most dangerous ones always do. Dawn broke on the day before the final match. pale light creeping across a villa tense with preparation and aftermath. The traitor had been discovered. A kitchen slave named Petrus who had served the family for 5 years, his loyalty purchased by Vibius's gold. He confessed everything, Celine reported grimly. The missing contract has been delivered to Vibius, along with details of our security arrangements and training methods. Livia's expression remained composed despite the betrayal's sting. Has the magistrate been contacted about creating a replacement contract? Yes, Domina. He arrives this afternoon. In the study, Maximus and Marcus pored over every available record of the Macedonians' previous matches. The opponent's reputation was fearsome: 30 victories, 17 deaths, trained in multiple combat styles. He favors Akapis, Marcus observed, pointing to descriptions of the forward-curving blade. Unusual for the arena, but effective, Maximus noted. The curve increases cutting power, a slashing weapon rather than a stabbing one, which means he needs space to be most dangerous, Marcus realized, his scholarly mind applying combat principles Maximus had taught him. Close quarters would neutralize his advantage. A knock at the door interrupted their analysis. Senator Drusus entered, walking without assistance for the first time in weeks. Though still gaunt, determination had restored a measure of his former vigor. "My son speaks sense," he said, having overheard their discussion. "I commanded legions before you were born, Maximus. The coppice requires room to generate force." The old man crossed to a cabinet and unlocked it with a key from around his neck. From within, he withdrew a gladius unlike any Maximus had seen in the arena. Shorter than standard, with a blade that gleamed with unusual luster. "Spanish steel," the senator explained, "from my military campaigns. Shorter reach but unmatched in close combat. The perfect counter to a coppice fighter." Maximus accepted the weapon with appropriate reverence. The balance was perfect, the grip worn but precisely fitted to a warrior's hand. "This carried you through battles?" he asked, testing the edge with his thumb. "Through campaigns that expanded the empire," Drusus confirmed. "Now it will help reclaim our family's place within it." The gesture's significance wasn't lost on anyone present. An heirloom weapon offered to a man once considered property, now entrusted with the family's future. Later, in the training yard, Maximus worked with the Spanish blade, adapting his technique to its characteristics. Livia watched from the portico, her mind calculating probabilities, contingencies, the narrow path to victory. "He moves differently with your father's sword," Celine observed beside her. "The weapon fits his natural style," Livia agreed. "Less showmanship, more efficiency." When Maximus finished his practice, Livia joined him as he cooled down in the shade. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of tomorrow's contest hovering between them. "The contract will be rewritten this afternoon," she finally said. "Your freedom remains secure, regardless of Vibius's theft." "I never doubted your word," he replied simply. Her fingers found the Thracian amulet she still wore. "Tomorrow changes everything, win or lose. If I lose, it will be my last match," he said with pragmatic acceptance. "And if you win?" The question carried more meaning than its simple words. Maximus met her eyes directly. "Freedom was my only goal when we began. Now, she prompted when he didn't continue. "Now I find freedom's value depends on what follows it." The implication hung in the air between them, a future neither had dared envision beyond tomorrow's contest. Their moment was interrupted by Marcus's excited arrival. "I've found something," he announced, brandishing a scroll. "Records from a Greek physician who treated the Macedonian last year. He describes a previous injury, a poorly healed fracture to the left collarbone." Maximus immediately grasped the significance. A weakness in his guard on that side, especially against upward strikes. "Exactly," Marcus beamed. "The physician noted he compensates well, but under sufficient pressure." As evening approached, final preparations were made. The family shared a quiet meal together. Conversation focused on practical matters rather than the emotions simmering beneath the surface. When they finished, Senator Drusus beckoned Maximus to follow him to the family shrine. There, the old man lit incense for the household gods and ancestral spirits. "I've never been a superstitious man," he said as fragrant smoke curled upward. "But tomorrow you carry more than your own fate into the arena." Maximus nodded. "I understand the responsibility." "Do you?" The senator's gaze was penetrating. "My daughter has never looked at anyone the way she looks at you." Before Maximus could respond, the senator placed a hand on his shoulder. "Win tomorrow. Not for Rome's entertainment, not for our family's restoration, not even for your freedom. Win for what could be." That night, unable to sleep, Livia found Maximus at their familiar bench in the garden. Without words, she sat beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said softly, "know that you've already changed everything." His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining. No further words were necessary as they sat together, facing the uncertain dawn. Rome had never seen the Colosseum so crowded. Citizens had camped overnight to secure positions, vendors had sold out of refreshments before midday, and even the most jaded senators arrived early to claim their seats. The final match of the Imperial Games had transcended mere sport to become the defining event of the season. Emperor Hadrian's arrival was heralded by trumpets and the Praetorian Guard in full ceremonial armor. He acknowledged the crowd's adulation with practiced dignity before taking his position in the imperial box. In the preparation chamber beneath the arena, Maximus completed his pre-battle ritual with methodical calm. The Spanish gladius hung at his side, an exception to traditional equipment granted through Cassius's influence and justified by the unusual nature of the Macedonians' own weapon choice. "The crowd favors you," Marcus reported, returning from a brief observation of the stands. "They've been chanting your name." "The crowd's favor is as changeable as April weather," Maximus replied, adjusting his arm guards. "Their cheers mean nothing once blood is drawn." Livia entered, her composure impeccable despite the tension evident in her eyes. For a moment, she and Maximus simply looked at each other, yesterday's garden conversation hanging unspoken between them. "The Macedonian has been studying your previous matches," she said, maintaining the practical tone that had defined their public relationship. "Vibius made certain he had access to complete records." "Good," Maximus nodded. "Let him prepare for the fighter I was, not the one I've become." When the final preparations were complete, Livia stepped closer. "A tradition from my mother's family," she explained, pressing something small and cool into his palm. "For protection." Maximus opened his hand to find a silver coin, worn smooth from handling, marked with the goddess Fortuna. "It will be waiting for you when you return," she promised, taking it back and securing it within her stola. Their eyes held for a moment longer than propriety allowed. Then, with a final nod, Maximus turned toward the gate that would lead him into the arena. "Maximus," she called softly. When he looked back, she said simply, "Remember your promise." The roar that greeted the champions as they entered the Colosseum was deafening. 50,000 voices raised in anticipation of the spectacle they had awaited for weeks. Maximus emerged from the western gate, acknowledging the crowd with restrained dignity. From the eastern entrance came the Macedonian, taller, broader, his olive skin oiled to catch the sun, the curved coppice gleaming in his hand. In the imperial box, Emperor Hadrian leaned forward with evident interest. Beside him sat distinguished guests, including Senator Vibius, whose confident smile suggested the outcome was already determined in his mind. The Drusus family occupied their honored position. Senator Drusus ramrod straight despite his illness, Marcus nervously twisting a stylus between his fingers, Livia outwardly serene while her hand occasionally touched the place where both Maximus's amulet and the silver coin rested against her skin. "Citizens of Rome," the Lanista's voice boomed across the arena. "Today we witness the culmination of the Imperial Games. Two undefeated champions meet in combat that will be remembered for generations." The formalities completed, the combatants approached the center of the arena. The Macedonian towered over Maximus, his physical presence intimidating even to experienced warriors. "I've been looking forward to this, Thracian," he said in Greek, his voice surprisingly cultured. "They say you were a prince before you were a slave. And you were nothing before you were a killer," Maximus replied in the same language. "Some transformations are less impressive than others." Anger flashed in the Macedonian's eyes, the first crack in his confident facade. The signal was given. Combat began without further ceremony. The Macedonian attacked immediately, the coppice sweeping in deadly arcs that forced Maximus to give ground. Each blow carried bone-shattering force, designed to end the contest quickly through overwhelming power. Maximus evaded rather than blocked, conserving energy while studying his opponent's patterns. The Macedonian's technique was flawless, but Marcus had been right. The left side guard rose fractionally slower after each powerful swing. The first exchange ended with both fighters unmarked but the crowd enthralled by the display of skill. The Macedonian circled, frustration beginning to show in his aggressive stance. "Is evasion the only tactic Thrace teaches its princes?" he taunted. Maximus didn't respond, maintaining his focused concentration. The next attack came with even greater ferocity, a flurry of strikes that drove Maximus toward the arena wall, limiting his movement options. The crowd gasped as the coppice finally found its mark, opening a shallow cut across Maximus's shoulder. First blood to the Macedonian, who played to the audience's reaction with practiced showmanship. In the Drusus box, Livia's knuckles whitened, but her expression revealed nothing. The match continued with increasing intensity. The Macedonian pressed his advantage, believing victory was imminent. What he failed to notice was Maximus gradually reducing the distance between them, turning each exchange into a closer engagement. When the decisive moment came, it happened with breathtaking speed. The Macedonian launched a powerful overhead strike, momentarily exposing the left collarbone weakness. Instead of retreating, Maximus stepped inside the arc of the swing, bringing the Spanish gladius up in a precise thrust that found the vulnerable point. The Macedonian staggered, shocked by both the strategy and the sudden pain. Before he could recover, Maximus executed a complex disarming move that sent the coppice spinning away across the sand. The crowd erupted as the seemingly invincible champion fell to his knees, defeated but alive. The emperor rose, the entire Colosseum holding its breath for his verdict. With deliberate ceremony, Hadrian extended his hand, thumb held horizontal, then slowly, decisively turning upward in the gesture of life. More surprising was what followed. The emperor beckoned a Praetorian guard, who approached carrying something that gleamed gold in the sunlight, a ceremonial trident, traditionally awarded only to the most exceptional champions. "The Thracian has earned more than victory," Hadrian's voice carried to the silent crowd. "He has earned freedom and citizenship of Rome." In that moment of triumph, Maximus looked not to the emperor, but across the arena to where Livia stood, her composure finally breaking into a smile that contained all their unspoken promises. The aftermath of victory unfolded with the ceremonial weight Rome gave to all significant transitions. In the forum, before witnesses and official scribes, Maximus received the wooden tablet that formally declared his status as both freedman and citizen, a combination so rare it required special documentation. Maximus of Thrace, formerly Gladiator, henceforth citizen of Rome. The magistrate intoned, presenting the inscribed tablet, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. The Drusus family stood as witnesses, their presence lending aristocratic endorsement to this unprecedented elevation. Senator Drusus, his health visibly improved by recent events, nodded with approval as the ceremony concluded. "The emperor's favor changes everything," he commented as they departed the forum. "Vibius finds himself suddenly isolated, former allies distancing themselves now that imperial preference is clear. His miscalculation was assuming the emperor values political loyalty above entertainment value," Livia observed. "Hadrian has always appreciated exceptional skill, regardless of its source." At the villa, messengers arrived continuously. Congratulations from previously distant acquaintances, invitations to gatherings where the Drusus family had been unwelcome for years, merchants suddenly willing to extend credit. The political landscape had shifted dramatically in a single afternoon. Most significant was a personal note from Praetor Cassius, delivered by his most trusted servant. The Senate convenes tomorrow. Your father's full restoration to active duties will be proposed. Opposition is not expected. For Maximus, freedom brought unfamiliar challenges. His possessions, formerly limited to what a slave might be permitted, now included substantial prize money, gifts from admirers, and the tangible weight of the citizenship tablet that represented his transformed status. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked him in the villa garden, where they had spent so many hours in training. Return to Thrace? Maximus considered the question that had occupied his thoughts since victory. Thrace exists in my memory as it was 6 years ago. The reality may be very different. But it's your homeland, Marcus pressed. Homeland is a complicated concept for those who've been forcibly removed from it, Maximus replied. Sometimes what we long for is not a place, but a feeling of belonging that place once provided. Their conversation was interrupted by commotion at the villa entrance. Shouting, the clash of weapons. Household guards rushed past, responding to an apparent threat. In the atrium, they found chaos. Senator Drusus slumped in a chair, blood staining his toga, servants applying pressure to a wound in his side. Before him stood Maximus, Spanish gladius in hand, standing over the body of a man in nondescript clothing. "Assassin," Livia explained tersely, her face pale but composed. "He posed as a messenger, struck when father accepted his tablet. Vibius makes his final move," Senator Drusus managed through gritted teeth. Predictable in his desperation. The physician was summoned immediately, examining the wound with careful attention. "The blade was deflected by your chair's armrest, Senator. Painful, but not life-threatening if properly treated." As the household guards removed the assassin's body and the senator was helped to his chambers, Maximus wiped his blade clean with methodical precision. "You saved my father's life," Livia said quietly when they were relatively alone. "I was nearby when the messenger arrived," he explained. Something in his manner seemed wrong. Too nervous, eyes constantly moving. Fortunate observation. Not fortune. Training. He sheathed the sword. Survival depends on recognizing threats before they manifest. That evening, as news of the assassination attempt spread through Rome's political circles, Praetor Cassius arrived personally to express concern and share information. "The assassin has been identified as a former gladiator from Vibius's private ludus," he informed them. Witnesses place Vibius at the docks this afternoon, apparently preparing for hasty departure to his estates in Sicily. "Running from consequences," Senator Drusus observed from his recuperation couch. "Cowardice finally outweighs ambition." When Cassius departed, the family gathered to discuss their rapidly changing circumstances. The senator's restored position, Vibius's fall from power, and the family's return to prominence created both opportunities and new challenges. Throughout the discussion, Maximus remained silent, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. When the practical matters were settled, he requested a private word with Senator Drusus. The others withdrew, leaving them alone in the study. "Your family has fulfilled every promise made to me," Maximus began formally. "My freedom and citizenship are secured. My debt to you is paid in full. Yet you remain with us," the senator observed. "Why?" "That is what I wish to discuss." Maximus squared his shoulders, the habitual stance of a man preparing for battle. In Thrace, a warrior who proved himself worthy could petition to join a noble household through marriage, regardless of his original status. Senator Drusus's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing. "I understand Rome has different customs," Maximus continued, "and that what I propose is unprecedented. But so is my position, former slave, now citizen, with the emperor's personal recognition." "You wish to marry my daughter," the senator stated bluntly. "I wish to offer her a choice," Maximus corrected. "As a free man with the means to provide security and position, the political advantages for your family would be significant. My citizenship combined with your restored status creates a unique alliance. And if this were purely a political arrangement? Drusus challenged. Would you still propose it? Maximus met the older man's gaze directly. No. There are more practical paths to power. A long silence followed, broken finally by the senator's thoughtful voice. My daughter, he said, has never been one to follow expected paths. Rome whispered, then talked, then shouted about the unprecedented wedding. The daughter of a patrician family, restored to prominence but still ancient in lineage, marrying a former gladiator, even one granted citizenship by the emperor himself, shattered conventions that had stood for centuries. They say the emperor may attend, Marcus told his sister as final preparations transformed the villa's atrium into a space worthy of the occasion. Cassius considers it likely, given his personal interest in your champion. Not my champion any longer, Livia corrected with a small smile. Soon to be my husband. The ceremony combined traditions, Roman formality, interwoven with Thracian customs Maximus had described from his homeland. The bride wore the traditional flame-colored veil, but beneath it, her gown incorporated subtle embroidery patterns from Thrace. The ceremonial bread was broken according to Roman custom, but the wine cups were decorated with mountain motifs from Maximus's birthplace. Senator Drusus, fully recovered and restored to his Senate position, had surprised everyone by embracing the unconventional match with unexpected enthusiasm. Rome stagnates without new blood, he explained to astonished colleagues. My future son-in-law brings qualities our decadent noble houses have forgotten: discipline, strategic thinking, and appreciation for the privileges citizenship bestows. Vibius's downfall had been as swift as it was complete. Evidence of his multiple plots against the Drusus family, combined with financial improprieties discovered during investigation, had resulted in exile to a remote province. His properties were confiscated. His name became synonymous with disgrace, and former allies competed to distance themselves from his memory. When the wedding day arrived, the unexpected presence of the emperor's litter outside the villa confirmed the rumors. Hadrian attended not in official capacity but as a distinguished guest, a mark of favor that elevated the already significant event to historic importance. The love of spectacle never leaves him, Cassius commented discreetly to Senator Drusus as they watched the emperor's arrival. A former slave marrying into one of Rome's oldest families. With his blessing, the poetry practically writes itself. The formal ceremony proceeded with dignity, the legal requirements fulfilled before witnesses of the highest rank. When the final words were spoken and the marriage contract sealed, Livia and Maximus stood together as equals before Roman law, a transformation as profound as any in the arena. In the celebration that followed, Emperor Hadrian approached the couple, his shrewd eyes assessing them with undisguised interest. You've created quite the precedent, he told them. Traditionalists are appalled, progressives delighted, and everyone thoroughly entertained. I couldn't have devised a better conclusion to the games had I planned it myself. We live to serve Rome's interests, your magnificence, Livia replied diplomatically. Indeed. The emperor's gaze lingered on Maximus. I understand you've accepted a position training the Praetorian Guard in Thracian combat techniques. At Praetor Cassius's recommendation, Maximus confirmed. My experience offers perspective that traditional Roman training lacks. Excellent. Fresh approaches strengthen us. Hadrian nodded approval. And your wife, I hear, will assist her father in the Senate despite traditional restrictions on women's political involvement. As his health permits, I serve as his scribe and advisor, Livia explained carefully. A daughter's duty. Of course. The emperor's small smile suggested he understood perfectly the reality behind the polite fiction. Rome benefits from talents regardless of their conventional application. Later, as evening fell and guests departed, Livia and Maximus found a moment alone in the garden that had witnessed so many of their private conversations. The fountain's gentle splash provided familiar background to their words. Senator Vibius's former ludus has been purchased, Maximus told her. The new owner seeks guidance on reforms to improve conditions. A worthy project for Rome's most famous former gladiator, Livia noted. Will you accept? With your support, he replied. There are changes long overdue in how Rome treats those who entertain them. From her gown, Livia withdrew something small and gleaming, a newly created seal that combined the Drusus family crest with symbols of Thracian heritage, crafted in silver and onyx. For correspondence in your new role, she explained, placing it in his palm. Neither fully Roman nor fully Thracian, but something new, like us. His fingers closed around both the seal and her hand. When I was first brought to Rome in chains, I believed my life had ended. Freedom was the only goal worth contemplating. And now? She asked, echoing the question from their garden conversation before the final match. Now I understand that true freedom isn't absence of obligation, but the right to choose one's commitments. His other hand rose to touch the Thracian amulet she still wore. I choose this. The future we build between worlds. As night settled over Rome, they stood together on the same balcony where Livia had once contemplated her need for a champion. The eternal city spread before them, its temples and forums gleaming in moonlight, unchanging yet constantly evolving, like the empire itself, like the traditions they had challenged, like the love that had grown between them against all expectation. Not a weapon forged in the arena, not a transaction of convenience, but a partnership that would reshape their lives and perhaps, in some small way, Rome itself.